We are the Lab Doctors. I'm Amanda.
I'm Dorothy.
And I'm Zhao Yong.
We are biomedical researchers who realized we still have a lot to learn about science.
So why not join us on this quest?
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Lab Doctors podcast. On this week's episode, we're going to talk about height.
HEIGHT.
Yeah, like are you tall or are you short?
Oh, this gives me another anxiety.
Specifically, height and health.
Oh, I thought you were going to say like height transplant.
Okay, so like whether height is related to certain health conditions. Have you all heard of any of such health conditions?
Oh yeah, like if you're too tall, your heart needs to be strong enough to be able to carry blood around. If not, you're screwed or something.
Yeah.
Okay, so actually this was from a Science Daily article which was talking about this study that was published a few days ago. So we're in the year 2022. But while I was reading that paper, I actually found an older paper which I want to talk about as well. So there have been studies on correlation between height and health. And overall, the studies that were reported are quite large sample size and are longitudinal or prospective cohorts, meaning they follow the people over a long period of time. And prospective just means that it's an observational thing. So they are like observing them as the passage of time goes on. So there is one caveat. These correlations of people's heights and their likelihood of experiencing health conditions could be due to biological reasons or other environmental factors. So that's like, are people tall because they have more nutrition, and is that why
They play basketball.
or they like exercise more? So these environmental factors could come into play. So I'll talk about the old study first, and then I'll talk about the newer study and like how it tries to deal with this. Is it due to biological reasons or the environment? So this old study was actually published in 2009. So it's actually the combined data from multiple studies. And each of these studies are like tens to hundreds of thousands in sample size. Okay, so they did list a few non-genetic determinants of height. So nutrition, illness, socioeconomic status, and psychosocial stress. So these are the things that could make you taller or shorter besides your genes. Okay, so we talked about the heart just now, right? So apparently, this study reported that shorter people appear to experience increased risk of coronary heart disease.
What?
Yeah.
Why? There's too much pressure because now the heart is too strong for my body.
So interestingly, short people seem to have it worse across the...
Tall and taller. Again, just kidding. Short.
Short people seem to have it worse across the cardiovascular diseases or risks in other papers, including risk of death from coronary disease, stroke subtypes, heart failure, and risk of sudden cardiac death.
Wait, did they categorize how short is short and how tall is tall?
Okay, so yeah, that's one of the limitations for all these studies. Some of it, they just group people into like certain like short, medium, tall. But then the thing is, right, they said like they couldn't find what are the exact numbers. And that's the problem with like these older papers. Like it's not very clear.
Of a person's height,
Yeah.
one of the easiest things
To measure, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like they couldn't find a consistent one because the 2009 study is a combination of a lot of studies.
Okay.
I hate it, but yeah. So the only thing going for short people in the heart department is that they were found to have lower risk of atrial fibrillation, which could lead to sustained arrhythmia. So that's short people, right? Okay, so cancers are actually found to be more common in taller people. And these include colorectal, prostate, breast, central nervous system, skin, thyroid, and blood cancers.
Is it because like they have more cells in their body, so the chances of the cells mutating, because it's just more cells, there's more chance for them to get mutated and get cancer?
sounds legit.
Okay, so one of the causes like that they propose in this 2009 study is organ size and cell proliferation. So you might have something going there. So another thing is overfeeding in children, increased insulin-like growth factor 1 or IGF-1, genetic factors, which they just put genetic factors, and sex hormones, which doesn't really help. So besides heart disease and cancer, so like heart disease risk is higher in shorter people and cancers are generally more common in taller people. So the other thing that they looked at was the suicide rate. So apparently suicide rate is generally lower in taller people.
Because I'm sad at being short.
Oh my my god, okay, so the likely cause is psychosocial stress that may lead to stunting and is linked to psychosis and psychiatric disorder because like being short is regarded as less attractive in a height-conscious society. So people would maybe feel like they are less likely to marry than taller peers, or you would go through childhood abuse, or like have lower intelligence. So the thing about this old study, right, is it's a lot of correlation and not causation. And then they're just throwing out like all the things that they found. And I think the reason, okay, this is my conspiracy theory, is that like, so you know you can get like with statistics, right, in like big sample sizes, you can get observations if you just like tweak your parameters. Okay, this is my conspiracy theory. Like that's why it's very not defined, like what the heights are, like what is short, what is tall, what is medium.
You just regroup how they classify the height. That's cheating.
To get patterns.
To get P less than 0.05.
That's my conspiracy theory. I would say that this is not what the paper said, obviously.
Imagine the person listening is like, no.
I don't know. I just always found it very strange that short people think that they are less attractive than tall people.
As a short person, I would say that, okay, so my shortness is like 1.5 low. Low 150.
Disclose it because that 5 cm variation.
I add a 0.5 to my height every time. But if I am a very, very short, like 140 or 150 on the dot, I would feel a bit insecure.
Okay, so the 2022 study, which I feel like is
it better?
Okay, it's better. So what they did is they performed a Mendelian Randomization-Phenome-wide association study.
Mendelian is what?
Oh, so Mendelian randomization was named after Gregor Mendel. Do y'all remember him?
Oh, it's
The pink white flower
I thought
guy.
it's the peace guy.
Peas, yes.
Pea flowers, which are like pink and white, or like purple and white. I don't know. It's like purple and white, then you get pink.
Yes,
is
some-
it?
Yes.
Something
Red
like
and
that.
white, red and
so
white.
basically, for people who might not be as familiar, so Gregor Mendel is a 19th century mathematician and biologist who famously conducted the pea plant experiment, which established many rules of heredity. So like how you inherit things. So Mendelian randomization is a method using measured variation in genes to study the causal effect of an exposure or an outcome. So you're using gene variation to see whether like it affects something. So in the case of this study, it involves grouping people according to their genetic makeup, which may help identify factors that influence our risk of developing diseases. So some diseases are linked to like genetic factors. So they use that to like kind of find patterns. So then it's phenome-wide association. So what is phenome?
Your phenotype genome.
Phenomenon.
Okay, so genome is your genetic makeup. So on the other hand, phenome is the totality of all phenotypes. So your physical traits or characteristics. Okay, so this protocol is basically looking at association between genetic variation, so Mendelian randomization, and physical traits. So that's where the phenome comes in. So this group used clinical and genetic data from a biobank with over 280,000 veterans registered in the US Department of Veteran Affairs Million Veteran Program. So it's just a program where they have the clinical and genetic data from veterans. So instead of relying just on measured height, which we said like could be due to other factors, they utilized this list of 3,290 genetic variants that are associated with height from a genome-wide meta-analysis. So there's this other meta-analysis where they like identified 3,290 genetic variants which are linked to height. So this is what they use to derive genetically predicted height. So in this study, we have measured height, which is like you just measure the person's height, and then genetically predicted height. So you group the people according to their genes.
Cool.
So the idea here is to try and discriminate between potentially causal associations versus associations that may be confounded by the environment. Okay. So here, the mean height across all participants was 176 cm. So
So tall? How is that the
Kind
mean?
of average for guys, but
yes, and because like a lot of the samples is males. So for the sake of completeness, I should note that the study also conducted analysis according to ethnicity, where about 3/4 were non-Hispanic white, 20% were non-Hispanic black, and 7.6% were Hispanic. So I think this distinction was made because the meta-analysis used to derive the genetically predicted height was a European ancestry meta-analysis. So like, you know, all those genetic variants that they used to get the genetically derived height, that was from a European database. So I think that's why they like grouped it accordingly. Okay, so the medical traits. So here, the cardiovascular or heart medical traits in this study are consistent with previous studies where height...
Why are you so angry?
Because I'm short. Means I have
Wait,
higher chance of coronary diseases.
Are you short for women?
Yeah?
Yes.
I can't even be an air stewardess. The minimum height requirement is
But
158.
I thought air stewardess need to be tall.
158?
Is that tall?
Tall enough to reach the overhead cabinets.
Oh.
That's why I can't be an air. If not, I won't be here. I'll be flying in a plane.
Really?
I don't want. Yeah.
Like that was like your dream, like your childhood dream.
It's more relaxing a job.
You need to deal with people.
Yeah, for like a few hours.
Okay, so in this study, consistent with previous studies, height or being tall appears to protect people from cardiovascular problems. Specifically, being taller was linked to lower risk of high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and coronary heart disease.
Okay, that makes sense, Peter. But you cannot be too tall because then you have low blood pressure.
Oh, okay. So like, remember at the beginning we talked about circulation. I forgot
Yeah.
what. Yeah, so we'll go into that later.
Oh, okay.
So the only heart-related issue linked to being tall was atrial fibrillation. So that's also consistent with the previous study. So I think the previous studies, their sample size were big enough to get real patterns. That's what
Okay.
I think, despite my conspiracy theory.
Okay.
So beyond the cardiovascular system, it seems that tall people have a higher risk of the majority of other conditions.
Oh, I like this paper.
They didn't look at the cancers in this study, but these include several neuropathies, dermatologic and musculoskeletal conditions, and varicose veins.
What's that? What's the last one?
The spider web veins on your legs.
Ah.
So they also group like some of the medical conditions according to circulatory system, and generally tall people had like issues with these conditions. Okay, so the first thing I'll go into is peripheral neuropathy, which the study did go into slightly more detail. So peripheral neuropathy is a condition involving damage to the nerves outside of your brain and spinal cord, particularly the limbs. So earlier studies hypothesized that this may be due to slower nerve conduction in taller individuals. So the current study confirms this link using genetic tools. So they found like genetic variants that are linked to like slower nerve conduction and therefore genetic neuropathies. Some other conditions which have been observed in neuropathy settings also include chronic ulcers and osteomyelitis, which in this study was linked to higher risk in tall people. So besides nerve conduction, we already talked about circulation or blood flow. So being tall was reported to increase risk of circulatory conditions like varicose veins and thrombosis. So that's blood clot in veins. So venous thromboembolism was also reported in an earlier, which taller people are at higher risk of. So on top of conduction and circulation, being tall also comes with increased weight bearing, which may explain higher risk for toe and foot deformities. Yeah.
That
So
explains why my friend broke his leg after he stepped off a stage at a club and needed to go
But
for
then
surgery.
Amanda always sprained her ankle.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Amanda is, what's your height?
1.5 low. It's the new term that I'm going to use. This is the law of averages. Okay, there's always exceptions.
Actually, when you say 1.5 low, I tend to assume that it's closer to like 150.
Oh, actually, I'm closer to 155, I think. Aren't
Yeah.
you?
1.5 low.
My passport says I'm 155, but I'm pretty sure I'm not.
No, I thought we did a height measurement for, and you're shorter than me.
It's not a competition. Moving on.
Okay, so actually I've come to the end and like basically why does any of this matter? Why are people even doing these studies?
Whether height reduction is important.
Like shave off your
So the research suggests that height may be something that we haven't, like as a scientific and medical community, haven't considered as a risk factor for common medical conditions,
That's true.
particularly those that affect the extremities. So it may also be used to assess disease surveillance according to someone's height. So future work focuses on potential mechanisms that link height to these health conditions and evaluating whether incorporating height into disease risk assessments can inform strategies to manage these conditions. So that's why people are still doing this study.
But it's so funny because it's something you can't really change.
Yeah, so it's a non-modifiable risk
Unless,
factor.
like when they're young, if my parents are short, then they'll be like, oh, you don't need to skip so much, you just be short can already. Like, don't need to ski, don't need to try to go basketball,
Wait,
play all
why?
these things that.
But you have a higher risk of heart condition, so
But the
shouldn't
tall
you
people
do?
have so many other things.
Yeah, but you should focus on cardiovascular exercises, right?
No, I can do other sports that are not like height inducing,
like swimming.
like table tennis.
Actually,
or
swimming
what,
makes you tall,
golf.
so
I don't know.
It's golf. Is golf a sport?
I mean, the way I see it is like, oh, if I have a higher risk for like heart issues, then like maybe I'll go like start going for disease surveillance like regularly.
Okay.
So
that
it's
kind
more
of thing.
reactive
Yeah,
not
it's not like
preventive.
No, it's
making me taller or shorter. It's like just knowing more about yourself so that you can
Okay.
better manage.
it's like age. Age is something that you can't change, but it's a risk factor for many diseases. So it's like above a certain age, you should go for like this screening. So
That's
like
true,
above
that's
a certain
true.
height or below a certain height, you need to be aware of these
Yeah.
things and then go for screening.
Which is one of the things they're trying to find out, whether incorporating height into like these like forms that you fill is like
They
will help
already
you.
incorporated height.
I mean, they incorporate height, but they don't like react.
Use it.
Yeah, they don't use it.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So they're like, whether if you use it, whether it will be better for like
They'll use it for BMI lah.
Yeah.
Interesting. So are you happy being the height you are?
I don't have a choice.
Oh,
So
that's true.
Absolutely.
So
not.
I'm glad, like, you know, we always say like, oh, we exercise for cardiovascular health. I'm like, oh yes, I should continue.
Why I'm not satisfied
Wait, what's
with
your
my
height?
height?
Okay, sorry.
You're 1'6".
No,
No,
he's once.
Am I that short?
How dare you?
Oh my goodness. You're 1'7" low.
Wait, are
Actually,
you?
I'm 174. So it's like,
It's still low.
Oh yeah,
Is it
it's
low?
round down.
Yeah, you round down. Yeah.
I round up to 175.
So you're gonna
Oh yeah,
cut.
to 175, not to 180.
No, then 175 is 1'7" mid, and then
Oh, you
1'7"
say-
high is 1'6" to 1'9".
You see, I would never say 1.7 low because it makes it feel more like 170.
No.
Oh yeah, so I should never say that.
That's why I would just
Yeah,
go with
153 or 154.
like because I'm above the 1.7 low already. Like
yes,
No, but if you
above
just-
1 or 2.
Yeah.
Zero
Go by the
or 1 or
rounding
2.
off. Just go by how you round it off.
No, you would say 1.7 mid.
I would still say 1.74.
I would say 1.5 mid as well.
So what is mid?
I'll just say 1.74.
Because you're not short.
Is that tall?
1'7" is
I don't
an
think-
average height for
Oh
guys.
no, I hate my height because it's like the perfect height to get hit by a whole bunch of shit.
Oh yeah. I like it when I enter the train
Uh-huh.
and then I realize that the tall people have to plan where they're gonna stand.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, I can't even hit swinging handbars, man.
So the thing about like very tall people, like I would say like 1.7 high.
I love how this is gonna be incorporated.
Like 1.7 high, like in general, the handholds, the handrails, like
Slap
they
your
are
face.
above that height already.
Oh.
But that handrail is exactly at my forehead. So
Sucks to be you.
I will ram my head against that shit. Or like sometimes
Someone releases it.
yes. Like so someone like maybe I'm standing
Someone like me who doesn't care.
behind or in front, someone holding the handrail, and then they just release and then it just whacks you in the head. I've had my head whacked so many times. Like it's nonsense. And the people just walk off because they don't give a shit.
No, it's because I'm not aware. I'm sorry if I've ever done this to any tall people around me. I'll be more aware from now on.
Yeah, man.
And I'm just like, oh, okay, lor. This is just my life. I'm like not tall enough to be like it to be a
Above.
blessing. I'm not short enough to like not have height as a curse.
But is that the only disadvantage?
Getting hit in the head is not the. Apparently, I need to worry about a whole other bunch of stuff. I don't know. I'm not very sure.
Yeah, oh my god, that's what I was thinking.
I'm like the ultimate in between. I feel like I'm at risk of everything because I'm average.
Yeah, average.
No, you shouldn't be at risk of anything.
Yeah, if you're average.
No, as in so the risk is
You'll get,
moderate
like-
for
Oh,
everything.
yeah.
Does that
The
make
risk is
sense?
small.
You'll be
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
borderline case for everything.
Which is exactly what's happening now. Like borderline for everything.
Oh, this is quite funny.
I'm sorry, is this triggering?
So-
Trigger warning.
That's why I'm like, it's not a blessing or a curse unless you are average.
Cool.
And as usual, subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Spotify. A like and a comment would really help us out.
You can also follow us on our social media, Instagram, Twitter or Facebook, and feel free to DM us any questions.
Alternatively, you can email us at thelabdoctors@gmail.com. We'll post all the article links in the episode description so that you can check them out. Average male height in Singapore, 172.6. Average female height, 160.
What?